How's it going, folks? This is Mike back for another video, and this is another response video to my friend James, DVD Collector 1974, who a couple of days ago posted another weekly chat video, a topic which I've actually started this response about 5 times now, and I'm having a hard time knowing exactly how I want to approach this. The topic that James chose has to do with the way we watch movies. Those of us who are deeply passionate about films and watch them over and over again and want to know as much about them as we can, and listen to commentaries and all this sort of thing, as opposed to the average film goer who might go to the movies 2 or 3 times a month just as a social thing, have a good time, and then watch the film, go home, and just kind of forget about it. So, what are the differences between these two kinds of film goers? And are those of us who are very passionate and like to share our knowledge, are we sort of on a, do we think of ourselves as being on a different level? Are we kind of snobbish about how we approach things and how we approach other people if they don't share our enthusiasm? And which brings me to when I first got done watching this video, I got this old book out, the Film Snob's Dictionary, which is a very cool little book that has a lot of truth in it, although it's also very funny. And I remember I did a video a couple of years ago. I just went back and watched it where I used this book. So it's been around for a while, just like I have. So I thought I would talk about this. Let's see, just being very personal. I think that I approach a film, first of all, as a fan and somebody who just wants to be entertained. I want to be moved. I want to be impressed. I want to learn something and try to experience what the filmmakers and the actors are presenting to me, and just take it in that way. Take it in on kind of a surface level, I guess, rather than going in with a film critic's attitude, because I'm not a film critic at all, or an attitude of cynicism where I sit back and say, okay, show me, impress me. I don't think I've ever gone to a film with that attitude. I can't recall anyway. I try to give the film itself the benefit of the doubt that it has something to show me and to offer me, to give me. Now, of course, it's always subjective. Did you like the movie? Did you hate it? Did you think it was badly done? Did you hate that actor? All sorts of things can make you have a cynical attitude about it after you've seen it, and maybe you never want to watch it again. Or maybe a film is so ridiculous that you just sort of fall in love with it. Like The Room, for example. I mean, that's a perfect example of somebody who tried to make a serious film and made the best comedy of the century. So, I mean, it's kind of hard to, for some of us anyway, to not cherish that film, but for the completely wrong reason. And certainly a lot of films that have been classified as cult films, low budget science fiction things that I happen to love, other people think, God, those are junk. But I just, to me, they are on another level or something. So as far as being snobbish or pretentious, I can be snobbish at times, depending on who I'm having an exchange with. And I can certainly be pretentious if I put a lot of effort into it. But I can't pretend with myself. I have to be very honest. What else did James say? He talked about people who watch silent films and people who watch foreign films with subtitles, and that people who really want to see films like that are certainly on a kind of a different level than people who just go to see the latest movies at the theater and would probably think, silent film, I'm not going to waste my time with that. They don't say anything, or I don't want to watch a foreign film and try to invest the time to read the subtitles. And I have to admit, I think that does take people on a slightly different level. But I will be very honest to say that when it comes to foreign films, as much as I love them, and as much as I love hearing the other languages, it's very difficult for me to read the subtitles because I want so much to watch the imagery. And there are a lot of films that I've seen, for example, Fellini's 8½, which is a very long and very difficult film anyway. I've I see different things in it every time I watch it because I'm more familiar with the dialogue on the screen, so I can watch more, right? Or I'm so used to I don't need to see what's happening on the screen, so I can read more in each successive watch. So I learn more about what people are doing with each other, what they're saying. So yeah, I'm one who I actually would not mind if more foreign films were dubbed into English, and that's probably anathema to a lot of you, but I kind of feel that way. Um, as far as silent films, yeah, I do. That's something that's been growing on me for the last several years, and it's a growing fascination. So, yeah. What else did James bring up? Let's see. He talked about it's different if you watch films by yourself and whether you go with other people or family members. Now, that's an interesting point because I think when I was about 16 years old, I started occasionally going to see films by myself instead of going out on a date or with a couple of friends or with my family. And it was a whole new experience of just sitting there alone in the dark and focusing on the movie. And that's sort of when I began to wake up, I guess. I'm not sure what that means. To wake up to the whole fascination of films. And a few years down the road, when I was in my early 20s, and I moved to a college town where it was very normal and very accepted for a lot of people to go to the movies by themselves. Whereas the environment that I grew up in, it was kind of strange. You saw somebody sitting by himself over here, or a woman over there, and you thought, what's wrong with them? Don't they have any friends, or couldn't get a date? You know, they were just looked upon as being kind of like losers. But when I moved to a college town, which is where I still live, it was a whole different concept, and there were a lot of people who just go by themselves. So I started doing the same thing, and slowly began to see more and more different kinds of films, a lot of foreign films, and I remember at some point, one of my friends, he was fascinated by directors, which is something that I had honestly never paid attention to before. I had always paid attention to the actors. I was fascinated by actors and actresses. But he was always saying, no, if you look at the certain director and you can see patterns in what they do in each successive film, and that was like a light went on in my head, a growing fascination with Woody Allen films and Martin Scorsese films, Robert Altman films. Look at the different ways that you can read the director like he's writing a novel. It's the same style in each film or something. It's really, anyway, that was one way that I started opening myself up. And there was also we had this really wonderful opportunity back in the 1970s. The University of Illinois, which is the college where I live, they had a film society. I can't remember now what it was called, but they would present avant-garde foreign films, cult films, all sorts of really strange things every weekend, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, and they would show them in classrooms all over campus. And so we would sit there in these classrooms and in these hard wooden chairs, totally uncomfortable, and just, usually there was no air conditioning, it was very hot. People who went to these things really wanted to see the movies. And that's where I started seeing a lot of things. That was where I first saw Fellini's 8.5 in a classroom. And films like, let's see, The Night of the Shooting Stars, Moscow Does Not Believe in Tears. I can't remember all of them that I saw. A lot of really obscure French and Italian films. I saw Eraserhead for the first time in one of those places. And there was the campus YMCA, of all places, they would do the very same thing. And they had their own film series, and they would also have different classroom in building or rooms within the YMCA building. Same situation, sitting in hard wooden chairs watching a movie up on a screen. And in those days, it was a movie on a reel. It was not digital. And you have to remember that was in the days before home video, and you caught these things when you could, or you may never get a chance to see them again, or at least we thought back then that we never would. So if you didn't see it at the show when it first came out, or on television if it happened to be there, or in one of these film society things, you at that time we thought we'd never get to see it again. So it was a really big deal. So that went on up until sometime in the 80s, and then I can't remember what happened. I guess they just stopped doing it. I don't really know why. So that's how it all began. And um, I don't know. I think that one thing that helped for me to change from being sort of a casual film lover to being someone who's more knowledgeable was just starting to read books. In the late 70s, I started buying a lot of books about films, different subjects, horror films, different actors and actresses, and also different directors. And I started reading about films that I still hadn't seen. And I started getting the idea of what the so-called experts were classifying as cult films and things that people, if they're going to be knowledgeable film lovers, need to see. So there were a lot of things I was prepared to think of as classics or important cult films before I ever had a chance to see them. So I think that influenced my thinking and my approach to a lot of movies. So I'm not sure if any of this is making any sense whatsoever, but trying to get my thoughts together. Let's see. What else did James talk about? I guess that's about all. I don't know if this makes any sense, but if anybody else would like to respond to James's video, certainly go watch it. I'll put a note or a link down here so make sure you can watch it. But yeah, so I guess in a way, I don't know if we're being super pretentious just because we love these things. Maybe we just like a lot of people love sports, or certain novelists, certain writers. It's kind of the same thing, I guess. Certain artists, and we just get very passionate about it. So, and I drive a lot of people crazy because I tend to start talking about things and getting into a lot of detail, and they're looking at me like I was crazy. I remember back when I was in high school. I think I was a sophomore or junior in high school, and for some reason, one of my teachers, he got tired of teaching the class. Or maybe it was one of the last days of school or something. He started doing these little trivia questions, and one of the subjects happened to be Academy Award winners, and he was asking all the way back to the first days of the Academy Awards, who were the actors and the pictures that won and all that. I knew every answer. I knew everything all the way back to 1928, and people were looking at me like, "Who are you? We've never seen we never even knew you existed until now." The only movie that everybody knew about was Gone with the Wind because it won. It was so famous and it won so many Academy Awards. But I was the only one that knew every single answer, so I was so proud. And for me, it was just common knowledge. I thought everybody knew this stuff, so. Yeah, I started early. I've been a weirdo for a long time. Okay, thanks for watching, and sorry for all the rambling. It's 13 minutes long. I'll try to do these quicker.